Hello everyone, my name is Amelia today. You want to share a story that happened quite some time ago in my life. It's probably the first time I'm opening up about it because it's an important part of my journey that shaped who I am today. The story starts when I was 25 and married my current husband Thomas, a tall man with an appealing look and a mature presence. His deep blue eyes, neatly kept brown hair, and warm smile are unforgettable to anyone who meets him. We were introduced by a mutual friend. Make sure to subscribe, to my channel, so I can continue bringing you more fascinating true stories like this one. And don't forget to watch this video till the end, and like the video, because the story is going to be incredibly interesting. Please hit the like button to show your support. At first, I didn't expect much from the matchmaking because I believed love should happen naturally. However, after our first meeting, Thomas made a lasting impression on me. He wasn't just elegant, but also respectful and considerate. Our conversation flowed naturally, as if we had known each other forever. From that moment, I felt warmth in him, something I had been longing for after a period of getting to know each other. We decided to get married. Our wedding was simple, but filled with joy and love. I vividly remember the day I wore a pure white wedding dress, holding Thomas's hand as we walked down the aisle, surrounded by the blessings of our family and friends. We exchanged our vows in front of everyone, and I truly believed I had found someone who would care for me forever. Our married life was like a dream in the beginning. Thomas was a devoted husband, always cared, staring, and looking after me. He was the director of a household materials company. A position he worked hard, for though his work kept him very busy, he always made time to have dinner with me or chat. After a long day, I felt fortunate, because not only did I have a great husband, but also a loving home. At least in the early days, our life together seemed perfect. Thomas was everything I could have wished for: caring, successful, and loving. However, his job required more and more of his time. He would leave home at 6 a.m. and wouldn't return until 12 p.m. Sometimes later, if there were urgent meetings or projects, his company wasn't near our home. So even though he drove a luxury BMW, the commute still took him nearly an hour each way. On business trips, he would often be away for a day or two, which made me feel incredibly lonely. I missed him terribly, especially during dinner when I would be eating alone, but I comforted myself, believing that all of his hard work was for our future. I convinced myself that he was sacrificing his time for both our happiness. At first, everything seemed fine despite his busy schedule. Thomas would always make up for it by spending his free time with me. We'd have dinner together, watch movies, or talk about our day. Our bond was strong, and I could feel his love in every moment we shared. I believed we were a perfect couple, and that nothing could ever change that. However, as time went by, his work pressure increased, and Thomas began to change. He came home exhausted, with little energy for conversation. Dinner often became a quiet affair, and instead of spending time with me, he would head to bed early to prepare for the next day. He left for work every morning before I was even awake. Our relationship slowly started to change, and the distance between us grew. Thomas became too tired to meet my needs for intimacy. There were nights when I tried to engage him, but he would smile and say he needed rest. Understood he was tired, but I couldn't help but feel neglected and alone. Despite my deep love for him, I realized that my emotional needs were no longer being met. For a young, vibrant woman like me, this growing emptiness was difficult to ignore. I kept telling myself that this was just a phase and that our love would overcome it. But deep inside, I couldn't deny that this distance was creating gaps in our relationship. At that point, I was still young and full of vitality, with strong desires and needs. Thomas's long work hours and frequent trips left me feeling increasingly deprived. The loneliness became unbearable, and many times I found myself trying to comfort my emotions in solitude one day like any other. Thomas left early for work, while I stayed behind to handle the household chores. Nothing unusual happened at first, but later, as I was finishing up the housework, I felt an uncomfortable restlessness in my heart, a smoldering ache for the entire week. Thomas had been too busy to spend time with me, and that absence started to wear on me. I felt the need to release my emotions, so I walked into the bedroom where I felt most at ease to unwind. I don't remember if I had closed the door or if I had forgotten in my haste, but I got lost in my feelings. Completely unaware of what was happening, around found me. The room was quiet, and I was fully absorbed in my emotions. That's when I looked up only to see a figure standing by the door. It was my father-in-law, Mr. Max, staring directly at me. I was stunned and couldn't speak. His eyes were locked on me, and I realized he had been standing there for some time watching me without my knowledge. I panicked, trying to cover up my confusion. "Dad, what are you doing?" "There," I stammered. Miss Max, seemingly snapping out of a trance, stuttered, "Oh, I was just passing by." Then he added quickly, "Don't worry, I didn't see anything." His words only made me more confused. I hadn't asked anything yet. He was explaining himself as if he had something to hide. The silence between us was deafening, and the tension in the room was palpable. After that, Mr. Max quickly left, and I stood there, my heart pounding. I didn't know how to process the situation all day. I couldn't shake the image of him standing at the door, and I wondered what would happen next. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. That afternoon, the soft yellow glow of the sunset poured through the kitchen window, coloring the space in warm light. I was preparing dinner as usual, while Thomas was still away at work. The house was quiet, filled only with the sounds of chopping and the scent of food cooking. I wore a thin white tank top and a knee-length skirt. Feeling comfortable at home, suddenly I felt a strange sensation, as if someone was watching me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the feeling didn't go away. It intensified, and I realized that someone's gaze was fixed on me. My heart tightened. I stopped moving and slowly turned my head, standing at the kitchen door. Mr. Max was staring at me, his eyes wide, not blinking. I was taken aback after a moment. I spoke, trying to sound normal. "Dad, what are you looking at?" Mr. Max seemed startled, as though waking up from a trance. His face flushed and he stammered, "Oh no, I was just thinking," before he quickly turned and left, the kitchen, his footsteps unsteady. I was left standing there, feeling both uncomfortable and confused. His actions reminded me of earlier when he saw me in the room. I started to realize that his behavior wasn't just my imagination. He often gazed at me for longer than usual, and sometimes I caught him smiling to himself when his eyes lingered on me. I tried to convince myself it was just a father-in-law's concern for his daughter-in-law, but I couldn't ignore the growing discomfort. I felt his actions grew bolder whenever we passed in the narrow hallway. His hand would briefly brush mine, even though it was a fleeting moment. It startled me. I wasn't sure if these gestures were intentional, but they were making me feel more and more uneasy. I started to feel trapped in my own house, and I noticed him quietly watching me from a distance, his gaze full of something I couldn't name. One morning, the sunlight streamed into the kitchen and we were having breakfast together as a family. The atmosphere was calm, the clatter of chopsticks and bowls breaking the silence as the meal was coming to an end. Thomas looked at us all and mentioned he would be going on a 4-day business trip for an important project. I smiled and nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness. The days without him always left a void, and this time was no different. After breakfast, he left, and I stayed behind to clean up. The house was no quieter, with only Mr. Max and me left. The atmosphere felt strangely heavy. I was cleaning when suddenly from behind, I felt 2 strong, rough hands wrap around me tightly. I dropped the towel in my hand, my heart racing before I could react. Mr. Max whispered in a trembling voice, "Amelia, can I hold you for a moment?" I froze, my body stiff, unable to believe what I was hearing. A surge of emotions washed over me. I wanted to resist, to push him away, but my body seemed to betray me. I took a deep breath and managed to speak. "Dad, you can't do this. It's wrong, but he didn't. Release me. He pulled me closer, his breath warm against my ear, his body tense. Amelia, I know this is wrong, but I can't stop anymore. I've kept this inside for too long. I felt a mix of shame, anger, and fear. I tried to break free, but he held on tightly. He continued as if desperate to confess everything he had been hiding. I can't forget. What I saw in ever meant to look, but I can't stop. Thinking about you. I'm sorry. I can't control myself anymore. My face burned with both embarrassment and anger. I pushed harder this time. Finally, breaking free. I turned around and looked at him with determination. Dad, this is wrong. I can't accept this. Please stop. Mr. Max lowered his gaze, but after a moment he lifted his head. Eyes filled with resolve, he stepped closer. His voice low, but urgent. Amelia, I can't hide this anymore. Since that day, I haven't been able to forget. Do you know how much this feeling hurts? I stepped back, my hands gripping the edge of the dining table, my heart racing with fear and anger. Dad, this isn't right. This is our family. You can't think like this. But he didn't stop. He moved closer, almost pleading just once. Amelia, I promise it won't go any further. I can't hold it in anymore. I turned away, trying to avoid his gaze. Dad, please stop. This is a family. We can't destroy it, mister. Max took a breath, but didn't give up. Amelia, I can't forget what I saw. I've tried, but I can't. You make me feel alive again after all these years of being alone. You don't understand. Anger, mixed with guilt and helplessness, filled me. I turned to him, voice firm and resolute. Dad, I can't. I will never do. This is my family. Please stop before it's too late. My words hit him like a blow. His eyes filled with pain and disappointment. After a long silence, he lowered his head, his voice hoarse. Amelia, I'm sorry. I don't deserve to be your father-in-law. I don't know why I acted like this. I couldn't control myself. I stood. Still, my eyes locked on him. My heart was still racing, but I managed to say calmly, this has to stop now. This is our family, and I would never cross this line. Mr. Max didn't respond, only nodding. As if accepting my words, he stepped back. His face filled with regret and fatigue, he turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps heavy, echoing in the hallway. I stood there, shaken finally, breathing a sigh of relief, but I knew the peace of this home had been shattered, and I couldn't forget what had happened from that day on. My father-in-law, Miss Max, seemed to disappear from our daily routine. Her Airlie went out and spent most of his time in his room, as if everything had become disconnected from him. When he did appear, it was only for brief moments, walking quietly past me without saying a word, avoiding any eye contact. The atmosphere in the house became heavy, and his silence was a constant reminder of what had happened. Thomas had no idea what had transpired. He assumed his father was just going through a phase of sadness or loneliness as he aged one. Evening during dinner, Thomas remarked that he noticed Mr. Max was no longer as enthusiastic about gardening as he used to be. He told me, I think, Dad is tired or something is wrong. He doesn't go outside as much as he used to, and he's not interested in the things he once loved. Maybe I should take some time to talk to him, but I'm not sure where to start. I nodded and kept my voice calm. Think Dad just needs some time off, I said, softly trying to suppress the anxiety inside me. The truth was only a canoe. The real reason why Max had withdrawn, the guilt weighed on me heavily every day. I often found myself wondering if things would ever return to normal. I wished I could forget everything and go back to the way things were. But Mr. Max's eyes, the look he gave me, during the rare occasions we crossed paths in the house, still haunted me. They weren't filled with anger or resentment, but with a heavy, lingering sadness, like he was trapped in his own unbearable guilt. I didn't know what to do. Should I try to ignore everything and pretend it never happened? Or should I confront it and find a way to resolve it regardless of my decision? I could feel the distance growing between me and him, and the peace in our family. Slowly slipping away, time was passing, but I knew deep down that these wounds would never heal through this experience. I learned the most important lesson of my life. The moral boundary is something that should never be crossed, no matter the circumstances in moments of weakness or emotional turmoil. We may be tempted to act impulsively, but the consequences can be devastating and irreversible. It's crucial to maintain ethical boundaries and protect what truly matters. Our family's silence or avoidance won't solve the problem. It only makes things worse. The best way to protect ourselves and those we love is to stay strong, stand firm in our beliefs, and respect ourselves. I also realize the importance of open communication in family relationships. We should never be afraid to express our concerns and feelings with our loved ones, especially our spouses. Keeping things hidden can lead to misunderstandings and unnecessary distance. We must cherish what we have and make sure that moments of weakness don't destroy the happiness we've worked hard to build. That's the lesson I want to share with you all today. Always remember to honor your values and boundaries. Never let fleeting emotions cause irreparable damage. Stand strong, protect your family, and never forget what truly matters. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found this meaningful and believe the lessons are valuable, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the next videos.